Pay attention to the woman in the blue scrubs. The security camera footage from March 2nd, 2019 captures a moment so ordinary, it feels staged. A home health aide arrives for her shift. She carries a leather bag. She smiles at someone off camera. She disappears through the front door of a modest ranch house in suburban Cleveland. Her name is Elena Vargas. She's 34 years old. She has worked as a home health aide for 12 years. She is a widow. Her husband died of pancreatic cancer 3 years earlier. She has no children. This job is her entire life. Inside that house is Robert Kellerman. He is 76 years old. 11 years ago, a drunk driver struck his vehicle on Interstate 71. The accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. His wife divorced him 8 months later. His 2 adult children, Thomas, 48, and Catherine, 45, visit twice a year. Elena has been Robert's caregiver for all 11 years. Within 6 months of this footage, Elena would be dead. This was not an accident. It was murder for hire. Elena Vargas grew up in Lorain, Ohio. Her mother cleaned hotel rooms. Her father worked the overnight shift at a steel mill. Elena was the first person in her family to graduate high school. She enrolled in a certified nursing assistant program at age 22. She met Miguel Vargas at a church fundraiser in 2004. He was a mechanic. They married 6 months later. Their life was modest, but stable. They talked about children. They never got the chance. Miguel was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in January 2015. He died that October. He was 31 years old. Elena stopped attending church. She stopped seeing friends. Work became her refuge. She was assigned to Robert Kellerman through Cleveland Home Health Services in April 2008. The assignment was supposed to be temporary, 6 weeks while he transitioned home from the rehabilitation center. 11 years later, she was still there. Robert Kellerman had been an engineer before the accident. He had designed industrial machinery. He had patents. He had investments. The accident destroyed his body, but left his mind intact. His wife, Janet, filed for divorce in 2009. She remarried within a year. Thomas and Catherine inherited their mother's indifference. Robert spent his days in a wheelchair in a house that felt too large and too empty. Elena was the only person who spoke to him like he still mattered. The relationship developed slowly, professionally at first, bathing, dressing, preparing meals, administering medications, then conversations during lunch, then evenings watching old films together, then genuine friendship. By 2016, Elena was working 6 days a week instead of 5. She brought books she thought Robert would enjoy. He asked about her life. She told him about Miguel. He told her about Janet. 2 people who had been abandoned found companionship in each other. In early 2018, Robert fell ill with pneumonia. Elena stayed by his hospital bed for 3 days. She slept in the chair beside him. She refused to leave. The nurses had to bring her meals. When Robert returned home, something had changed. The boundaries between caregiver and patient had dissolved. They were simply 2 people who cared about each other. Robert told her he loved her in June 2018. Elena said it back. Neither of them told anyone. The family learns Thomas Kellerman arrived unannounced on January 15, 2019. He had a key. He let himself in. He found his father and Elena in the living room. They were holding hands. They were watching television. Elena's head was resting on Robert's shoulder. Thomas demanded to speak with his father alone. Elena left the room. The argument lasted 20 minutes. Neighbors reported hearing raised voices. When Elena returned, Thomas was gone. Robert told Elena what his son had said. Elena was manipulating him. Elena was after his money. Elena needed to be fired immediately. Robert refused. Thomas called his sister that evening. Catherine arrived the next day. The siblings confronted their father together. Robert was competent. Robert was of sound mind. Robert made his own decisions. They demanded he submit to a cognitive evaluation. Robert agreed to prove them wrong. Dr. Patricia Chen, a neuropsychologist at Cleveland Clinic, conducted the evaluation on January 28, 2019. The assessment took 4 hours. Dr. Chen tested memory, reasoning, judgment, and decision-making capacity. Robert scored within normal ranges on every measure. The report was unambiguous. Robert Kellerman was fully competent to make his own financial and personal decisions. Thomas and Catherine consulted 3 attorneys. All 3 delivered the same conclusion. They had no legal grounds to intervene. Their father had the right to live his life as he chose. The siblings had one remaining concern: the will. Robert Kellerman's estate was valued at approximately $4.2 million. Patents, investments, real estate. The existing will divided everything equally between Thomas and Catherine. Each would inherit roughly $2.1 million. On February 14, 2019, Robert contacted his attorney, David Brennan. Robert wanted to update his will. He wanted to leave $3.9 million to Elena Vargas. Thomas and Catherine would each receive $150,000. Brennan's paralegal mentioned the change to a friend. The friend was Catherine's former college roommate. Word reached the Kellerman siblings within days. They had been concerned about losing some of their inheritance. Now, they were losing nearly all of it. Thomas and Catherine met at Catherine's home in Shaker Heights on February 22, 2019. Catherine's husband, Mark Preston, attended the meeting. The 3 of them sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours. Later testimony would reveal the substance of that conversation. They had tried legal channels. They had failed. Their father refused to listen. The will would be signed within weeks. Once signed, their inheritance would be gone. Someone proposed a different solution. If Elena disappeared, the will would never be signed. If Elena disappeared, their father would have no one to leave the money to. If Elena disappeared, everything would return to normal. Mark Preston said he knew someone who could help. A former military contact. Someone who handled problems discreetly. Someone who worked for cash. The meeting ended with an agreement. Mark would reach out to the contact. Thomas would handle the first payment. Catherine would monitor Elena's schedule. Before moving forward, they tried one final option. Thomas visited Elena at her apartment on March 1, 2019. He presented her with a cashier's check for $250,000. The condition was simple: leave Cleveland, never contact Robert again. The money was hers. Elena refused. She told Thomas she loved his father. She told him money meant nothing compared to that. She told him to leave. Thomas called Mark Preston that night. The refusal sealed Elena's fate. Mark contacted Vincent Shaw on March 3, 2019. Shaw was 42 years old. He had served in the Marine Corps from 1995 to 2003. He had been deployed to Iraq. He had returned with PTSD and a dishonorable discharge. He worked security at a warehouse. He lived alone. He needed money. Mark and Vincent met at a rest stop on I-480 on March 5th. Mark explained the situation. Vincent named his price, $80,000, half up front, half after. Thomas withdrew $40,000 in cash from 3 different banks over 2 days. The withdrawals were structured to avoid reporting requirements. Each was just under $10,000. Mark delivered the first payment on March 8th. Same rest stop, duffel bag, cash counted in the front seat of Vincent's pickup truck. Vincent spent the next week studying Elena's routine, her apartment, her work schedule, her vehicle, her routes. Catherine provided the information Vincent needed: shift times, license plate number, preferred grocery store. On March 16, 2019, Catherine sent a text message to Mark, leaving at 8 p.m. tonight. Mark forwarded the message to Vincent. It was the signal to proceed. Elena Vargas worked her usual Saturday shift on March 16, 2019. She arrived at Robert's house at 9 a.m. She prepared breakfast. She helped Robert with his morning medications. They spent the afternoon playing cards. At 7:45 p.m., Elena kissed Robert goodbye. It was a Saturday ritual. She left early to attend evening mass at St. Mary's Catholic Church. Robert told her to drive safely. Elena smiled. She promised to see him in the morning. Security footage from Robert's driveway shows Elena leaving at 7:52 p.m. She is carrying her leather bag. She appears relaxed. She has no awareness of danger. Vincent Shaw was waiting in the parking lot of Elena's apartment complex. Elena arrived at 8:08 p.m. She parked in her assigned space. She gathered her bag from the passenger seat. She stepped out of her vehicle. Vincent approached from behind. The abduction took less than 30 seconds. Witnesses later reported hearing a brief commotion, a shout, car doors slamming, an engine accelerating. No one thought to call the police. Vincent drove Elena to an abandoned warehouse in Maple Heights. The building had been empty for 4 years. No security, no cameras, no witnesses. At 8:47 p.m., 39 minutes after she was taken, Vincent strangled Elena Vargas to death. The medical examiner would later determine she had defensive wounds on her hands. She fought, she struggled, she lost. Vincent left her body in the warehouse. He drove to a gas station. He filled his tank. He bought a coffee. Surveillance footage captured him at the register at 9:23 p.m. He appeared calm. At 10:45 p.m., Vincent met Mark Preston at the same rest stop on I-480. Mark handed him the second payment, another $40,000 in a duffel bag. The transaction took less than 5 minutes. Elena Vargas was dead. The conspirators believed they had succeeded. Robert Kellerman called Elena's phone at 7 a.m. on Sunday, March 17th. The call went to voicemail. He called again at 8 a.m. Voicemail. He called at 9 a.m. Voicemail. Robert knew something was wrong. Elena never missed a shift. Elena always answered her phone. Elena had worked for him for 11 years without a single unexplained absence. He called the agency. They had no information. He called Elena's apartment building. No one had seen her. He called the police to file a missing person report. Thomas and Catherine arrived at their father's house that evening. They told Robert they had spoken with Elena. They said Elena had taken money from Thomas's earlier offer and left town. They said she was done playing the caregiver role. They said she had gotten what she wanted. Robert didn't believe them, but doubt crept in. Elena had refused the money when Thomas offered it. What if she had changed her mind? What if she had been lying about her feelings? What if he had been a fool? Robert stopped eating. He stopped taking his medications. He stopped leaving his bedroom. His children hired a new caregiver. Robert barely acknowledged her presence. On April 2nd, 2019, 17 days after Elena disappeared, Robert Kellerman suffered a massive heart attack. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. They performed CPR for 40 minutes. Robert was pronounced dead at Cleveland Clinic at 11:37 a.m. The medical examiner listed the cause of death as acute myocardial infarction. The death certificate included a secondary notation: Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Broken heart syndrome. Robert died believing Elena had abandoned him. He was wrong. Elena's body was discovered on April 18, 2019. A contractor inspecting the Maple Heights warehouse for potential purchase found her remains in a storage room on the second floor. Decomposition was advanced. Dental records confirmed her identity. The medical examiner determined cause of death: manual strangulation. Time of death: approximately 1 month earlier. Cleveland Police Detective Sarah Morrison was assigned to the case. Morrison had worked homicide for 14 years. She reviewed Elena's missing person report. She interviewed Robert's family. Something felt wrong. Thomas and Catherine claimed Elena had left voluntarily, but Elena's apartment showed no signs of packing. Her clothes remained in the closet. Her toiletries sat on the bathroom counter. Her mail was piling up. Her vehicle had been found in her assigned parking space. People who run away take their belongings. Elena had taken nothing. Morrison obtained phone records for Thomas, Catherine, and Mark Preston. The records showed dozens of calls between the three of them in the weeks before Elena's disappearance. They showed calls to an unknown number, a burner phone purchased at a convenience store in Parma. Bank records revealed Thomas's suspicious cash withdrawals, 3 banks, 2 days. Amounts just under the reporting threshold. Total, $40,000. Mark Preston made a similar withdrawal 1 week later. Another $40,000 in cash. Morrison executed search warrants on May 3, 2019. The searches covered 3 residences: Thomas's home, Catherine's home, Mark Preston's home. Forensic analysts recovered text messages from Catherine's phone. The messages showed coordination of Elena's schedule. They showed real-time updates on her movements. The final message, sent at 8:03 p.m. on March 16th, read, "Leaving now." The burner phone number appeared repeatedly in Mark's call logs. Investigators traced the phone's purchase to a 7-Eleven in Parma. Security footage showed a man matching Vincent Shaw's description, buying the phone on March 2nd. Vincent Shaw was identified through facial recognition. His military records confirmed his identity. His current employer confirmed his work schedule. His schedule showed he had called in sick on March 16th. Cell tower data placed Vincent's phone at Elena's apartment complex at 8:08 p.m. on March 16th. The same data placed his phone at the Maple Heights warehouse at 8:47 p.m. Rest stop surveillance footage captured Mark's meetings with Vincent. March 8th, the first payment. March 16th, the second payment. Both meetings recorded on camera. Forensic teams processed Vincent's vehicle. They found Elena's DNA on the passenger seat. They found fibers matching her clothing in the trunk. Vincent Shaw was arrested on May 9, 2019. He was offered a plea deal, cooperation for a reduced sentence, life with possibility of parole after 25 years instead of life without parole. Vincent took the deal. His testimony provided the complete narrative: the meeting at Catherine's house, Mark's contact, the payments, the surveillance, the text message signal, the abduction, the murder, everything. Thomas Kellerman, Catherine Preston, and Mark Preston were arrested on May 14, 2019. The conspiracy had unraveled. The trial began on February 3, 2020. Thomas Kellerman, Catherine Preston, and Mark Preston were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and kidnapping. The prosecution presented surveillance footage of Elena's final day. They presented phone records connecting the defendants. They presented bank records showing the payments. They presented Vincent Shaw's testimony, describing the conspiracy in detail. The defense argued that Vincent Shaw had acted beyond his instructions. They claimed the defendants had hired him to intimidate Elena, not kill her. They claimed they were guilty of poor judgment, but not murder. The jury didn't believe them. The prosecution's closing argument was direct. These defendants hired a killer. They paid him $80,000. They tracked their victim. They gave the signal to proceed. Their intent was clear. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. Guilty. All counts. All defendants. Sentencing occurred on March 12, 2020. Thomas Kellerman received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Catherine Preston received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mark Preston received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Vincent Shaw received 25 years to life with the possibility of parole. None of them would ever be free again. Robert Kellerman's will was never updated. He died before the changes could be executed. Under Ohio law, his estate was distributed according to his existing will. But Ohio's Slayer statute prevented Thomas and Catherine from inheriting. Individuals convicted of murdering a testator cannot benefit from their victim's estate. Robert's will contained a contingency clause. If his children predeceased him or were otherwise unable to inherit, the estate would be donated to the American Cancer Society in memory of his late wife's mother, who had died of breast cancer in 1987. The American Cancer Society received $4.2 million. Thomas and Catherine murdered Elena to protect their inheritance. They received nothing. In a final cruel irony, their actions killed their father. The lie they told Robert, that Elena had abandoned him for money, caused the broken heart syndrome that ended his life. They murdered Elena. They killed Robert. They destroyed their entire family. Elena's younger sister, Maria, delivered a victim impact statement at sentencing. She described Elena's kindness, her dedication to her patients, her grief after losing Miguel, her capacity for love even after devastating loss. Maria closed with one sentence: "She refused your money because she loved him. You killed her for being a better person than you could ever understand." Cleveland Home Health Services established the Elena Vargas Memorial Scholarship in 2020. The scholarship provides tuition assistance to nursing students who have experienced significant personal loss. It has supported 47 students to date. The case led to increased protections for home health workers in Ohio. Senate Bill 247, passed in 2021, requires background checks for family members seeking conservatorship over patients receiving in-home care. The law is known informally as Elena's Law. The security footage from March 2, 2019 remains. Elena arriving for her shift, smiling, carrying her leather bag, disappearing through the door to care for the man she loved. It was an ordinary moment. It captured something extraordinary. Love, genuine and unshakable. The kind that refuses $250,000. The kind worth dying for. Thomas and Catherine Kellerman will never understand that.